My name is Miranda, and I'm about to turn 20. I am in the last week of college, where I study finance. It's a difficult specialty, but I've always had a knack for numbers. Now I'm sitting in my dorm room, surrounded by textbooks, scribbled notes, and empty coffee cups, mixed with chocolate wrappers, my companions in sleepless nights before exams. I try to focus on the last chapter of the textbook, but my thoughts keep slipping away. I can't help but think about my upcoming birthday. My family is going to celebrate it after the exams. Family holidays are always a strange and difficult event for me. They leave a bitter taste in my mouth, mixed with memories of childhood, where I always felt like an outsider, not like everyone else. My older sister Vanessa, who is now 25, has always been a golden child. Her parents looked at her with undisguised adoration, as if she were the living embodiment of their hopes and ambitions. I've always felt like her shadow, complement, backup. I remember waiting for my 8th birthday as a child, hoping it would be as special as Vanessa's holidays. I can still see her 13th birthday before my eyes, a sparkling castle in the courtyard, a magician who pulled a rabbit out of a hat, a huge cake shining with candles. Back then, I looked at all this and thought that this year, when it's my turn, I'll feel special too. But when my day came, I was handed a small cake from the supermarket and a pair of socks. I tried not to get upset, but tears still treacherously came to my eyes. Then Mom just sighed, patted me on the head and said, "Don't be dramatic, Miranda, it's just a birthday." It was then that I felt for the first time that I was a different person for them, not so important. Over the years, this feeling has only intensified. Vanessa got a new phone every year, and I got her old one with a cracked screen. She wore fancy clothes, and I got her worn clothes. When she graduated from high school, they bought her a car, and when it was my turn, they gave me a gift certificate to the bookstore. The only person who always saw something more in me was my grandmother. She never treated me like a backup. When I told her that I wanted to study finance, she smiled and said, "You're a smart girl, Miranda. You have a good head on your shoulders, you will go far." And now it was she who insisted that my birthday be a decent one. My grandmother gave my parents several $1,000s to organize a party for me. I was shocked when I found out about it. Usually my birthdays went by unnoticed, but this time my parents didn't even argue. They just took the money and told me to focus on the exams. I overheard Vanessa throwing a tantrum about it. Why would she throw a big party? She whined. I could use this money for a trip I'd been dreaming about for a long time. But Grandma quickly put her down. "Shut up, Vanessa. You're being pampered enough as it is. I just gave you $10,000 for rent, and you're still living at home." After these words, the sister fell silent. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Now I'm sitting at my textbooks, preparing for my last exam. It's over tomorrow, and I'll be free. It is free of numbers, calculations, and formulas. I'm free to finally celebrate my birthday. The next day, I walked out of the classroom feeling like a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. My classmates were discussing summer plans around me, and my phone was full of messages from friends congratulating me on the end of exams and on my upcoming birthday. It was nice to have someone remember me, even if they were people I'd only known for a couple of years. I headed to the dorm, thinking that I would be home soon. But for some reason, instead of joy, a strange uneasiness spread in his chest. "Happy almost birthday." Neighbor Jess called out cheerfully when I entered our shared space. She was sitting on the windowsill, hugging a mug of coffee, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. "Are you ready for a big family party?" "What is it?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded, but it was more an automatic gesture than an expression of real enthusiasm. "Yes, it should be interesting." But my voice sounded dull, and Jess caught it right away. "You don't seem too worried." "Everything is fine." I sighed heavily and collapsed onto the bed, allowing myself to sink into fatigue and confusion for a moment. It's just my family. They're not exactly that warm and fluffy, especially when it comes to me. Jess nodded understandingly, as if she knew what I was talking about, although, of course, she couldn't know everything. But your grandmother organized all this, right? It means something. I smiled bitterly. She was right. Grandma was always different. She was the only person who seemed to really notice me. I admitted it out loud. She's always been different. In fact, she even seems to like me. There was a pause between us, filled with thoughts I couldn't express. While I was packing my backpack for the trip home, I couldn't get rid of the strange, oppressive feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was a complex one, a mixture of hope and fear. The hope that maybe this time my birthday will be special, and the fear that everything will go wrong again. The drive home seemed longer than usual. The bus was rocking, and my mind was wandering. I imagined what it would be like, a decorated house, a cake, the smiles of my parents, maybe even the kind words that I always missed so much. I tried to convince myself that everything would be fine. That grandma wouldn't let them get around me again. When the bus pulled up to a familiar bend, I caught myself holding my breath. The driveway was empty, as always. The house looked familiar. It's too familiar. No balloons, no garlands. There was nothing to indicate that a celebration was going to take place here. I forced a smile. Maybe they're just hiding a surprise? Maybe everything is ready, but hidden from view to surprise me? With this thought, I took a deep breath and opened the front door. Mom? Dad? I'm home. I called, trying to keep my voice cheerful. But the house was quiet. It's too quiet. I frowned, put my backpack by the door, and walked slowly into the living room. My parents were sitting there on the couch. They looked strange. Too calm. It's too uncomfortable. There was not the slightest sign of preparations for the holiday in the room. No boxes with decorations, no smells from cooking food. Hi, I managed, not hiding my confusion. Where are all these, well, festive things? They exchanged glances. And that look, it was like a blow. Miranda. My father began, his voice sounding strangely distant. We decided not to organize your party. I blinked at him. I must have misheard. But Grandma gave you money, for my birthday, I said slowly, as if every sound was difficult. We gave the money to Vanessa, Mom said, her voice quiet but firm. She and her boyfriend flew to Hawaii a couple of days ago. Those words devastated me. I felt like everything was getting cold inside, like something had snapped in my chest. But it was on my birthday. I heard my voice tremble. She gave them to you for me. Dad looked away. Vanessa needed a vacation. You know, right? I shook my head, as if trying to force the meaning of those words out of her. Do I understand? No. I don't understand. This was supposed to be my party. I invited people. What am I going to tell them now? We've already taken care of everything, Mom said with the same cold, dismissive tone that I've hated since childhood. We called everyone and said that you have problems with college. That the party is cancelled. Her words cut painfully. I stood there, trying to figure out how it was that my own existence turned out to be unnecessary, superfluous, empty again. Did you lie to them about me? I whispered, but then my voice got louder, anger breaking through. How could you? My father's face turned to stone. That's enough, Miranda. You need to learn to obey. Stop being so selfish. Selfish. The word sounded like a slap in the face. Selfish? I almost shouted it out. How can I be selfish? It was my birthday. My party. Just then, the front door opened. I turned around, hoping for a moment that Vanessa had returned early, but instead I just felt a surge of guilt. Grandma was standing in the doorway. Her gaze instantly became sharp, her eyes narrowed, assessing the situation. She quickly realized that something was wrong. "Where's the party?" Her voice was harsh, almost demanding. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to figure out what words they would use to explain what had happened. They froze, as if each of them was hoping the other would start talking. But the words stuck in their throats, and at that moment, something in me snapped. "There's not going to be any party, Grandma," I said, trying to keep my voice from trembling. They gave the money to Vanessa. On her trip to Hawaii." There was silence in the room. And in that silence, for the first time, I saw on my grandmother's face an expression I hadn't known before, a mixture of rage, disappointment, and something deeper, more personal. It was all directed at my parents. "Is that true?" "Stop it," she demanded. My parents couldn't meet her eyes. Their silence was the answer. "I see," Grandma said, and her voice was as cold as the icy wind on a winter night. She looked at me and her face softened. "Miranda, darling, go pack your things. You're coming with me." I didn't need to be told twice. I rushed upstairs, throwing my clothes into my backpack, not sorting out what I was taking. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. At that time, I could hear my grandmother's muffled but tense voice. She spoke to my parents quietly, but with such cold determination that every word seemed to strike like a whip. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew it was her verdict. When I came downstairs, Grandma was already at the door. Not a word, not a glance in the direction of the parents. Just waiting. We went out. I got into her car, and when she started the engine, I let myself cry for the first time all day. The tears flowed by themselves, 20 years of feeling unnecessary, unnoticed, superfluous, it all spilled out. I cried for all the past years, for every forgotten birthday, for every injustice. Grandma put her hand on mine and patted it lightly. "Don't worry, darling," she said, her voice warm but firm, full of determination. "We'll figure it out. You deserve better. And it's high time someone showed you that you're special." We drove in silence. I looked out the window at the streets rushing by, and her words rang in my head. Simple, but so important. Her house was on the outskirts of the city, large, beautiful, 2-storied, with a cozy porch and a well-tended garden. It seemed like a different world compared to my parents' house. It smelled of peace and security. I knew I could be myself here. As we pulled into the driveway, Grandma turned to me, her eyes full of determination. "This might not be the party you were expecting, Miranda. But we'll celebrate your birthday properly." Inside the house, she immediately picked up her phone and started making orders. I watched her in amazement. She ordered enough food to feed an army. "I hope you're hungry," she said with a wink, and hung up. A real feast awaits us. While we were waiting for the delivery, Grandma bustled around the kitchen, taking out the best china and silver cutlery. She seemed so confident, so calm. I offered to help, but she just waved me off. "It's your birthday, honey. Just relax." I sat down at the kitchen table, watching her scurrying movements. Everything seemed too right, too kind. And I couldn't stand it. "Grandma," I began, my voice trembling treacherously. Why don't they like me?" She froze, her back straightened, and then slowly turned to me. There was a sadness on her face, old and deep, like the shadows at the bottom of a well. She sat down opposite me, taking my hands in hers. "Oh, Miranda," she whispered, "I guess it's time for you to find out the truth." My heart started beating faster. The truth about what? Grandma sighed, her gaze dropped, as if it was hard for her to look into my eyes. Your parents, she began, and her voice faltered. They didn't want you to be born. Those words hit me in the heart. It took me a moment to understand what she said. It was as if I couldn't breathe, as if I was being crushed by something heavy. What? I gasped. Grandma squeezed my hands tighter. They thought Vanessa was enough. Your mother, she had a difficult pregnancy, Miranda. She almost died when she gave birth to you. After that, everything changed. She blamed you for what she went through. And your father, he just didn't want to go through the fear of losing her again. I felt tears welling up in my eyes again. So it's my fault? I whispered, and the words sounded like a plaintive whisper in the silence. No, Miranda. Grandma said it so abruptly that I flinched. No. It's not your fault. These things, sometimes just happen. But your mother, she couldn't handle it. She was trying to avoid you. And your father and Vanessa just followed her example. I sat there, stunned. All this time, I felt that something was wrong with me, that I was somehow invisible in my own family. But I could never have imagined that the reason was so deep and painful. Then the doorbell rang. Grandma got up to take delivery. I sat there, trying to process what I just heard. Everything in me screamed, from misunderstanding, from pain, from some strange relief that I finally found out the truth. The remaining hours flew by in a blur. My grandmother and I ate, drank, and talked about her youth, about the strange accidents and funny stories she tried to distract me with. Sometimes I even laughed, not out of happiness, but because there was something simple and sincere in her stories. As if it could temporarily erase the heaviness that was pressing on my chest. We ate too much, as if we were drowning out the emptiness that gaped inside me. But for the first time in many years, I felt like at least someone wanted to make me happy. That at least one day is mine. When we were finishing the last piece of cake, the phone rang. Grandma glanced at the screen, and then turned to me with a barely noticeable mischievous twinkle in her eyes. "This is Vanessa," she said. "Let's see what she says." Curiosity overcame everything else. I nodded. Grandma turned on the speakerphone. Vanessa's voice was nervous, almost panicked. "Grandmother? Why is my card blocked? What's happening?" "Hi, Vanessa." Grandma's voice was icy, calm, and unyielding. "It looks like you just realized that for every action there are consequences." "What? What actions? What are you talking about?" Vanessa's voice trembled and rose several tones. "About your behavior." "About your parents' behavior," Grandma replied, and there was steel in her voice. "You took the money that was meant to celebrate your sister's birthday and used it for your own selfish purposes. I am deeply disappointed in you." There was a pause. Heavy, thick. Then Vanessa spoke, and there was anger in her voice. "Oh, come on, Grandma. Mom and Dad made the right choice. Miranda didn't need this stupid party. She's not talking about anything at all. You're just a crazy old woman who doesn't know when to stop." "That's enough," Grandma interrupted her, her voice like a knife blade. "I've heard everything I need to hear." And with that, she disconnected the call. The silence in the room was almost deafening. I stared at my grandmother, my eyes wide. "Are you really? Did you block her card?" She nodded, and a satisfied smile appeared on her face. "And your parents' account, too. It's time for them to learn to stand on their own 2 feet." As if on cue, the phone rang again. This time it's my parents. Grandma didn't even look at the screen. "Ignore it," she said, turning to me. And as if a financial bomb hadn't just been dropped in the room, she added, "Now, how about planning the rest of your birthday?" And I allowed myself to smile. The remaining days with Grandma were like a dream. We went shopping, bought things that I really liked, not the ones that Vanessa left behind. We wandered through museums, looked at paintings, and talked about life. Grandma told me stories from her childhood, and I listened as if fascinated. For the first time, I felt truly loved. For the first time, I was not superfluous. We were sitting in the cozy kitchen, drinking tea, laughing at some nonsense, and the world seemed so simple and warm. Grandma looked at me in a way that no one in my family had ever looked at. With love. With acceptance. With understanding. But all good things come to an end. The day came when I had to go back to the dorm. I packed my things, and every item in my backpack reminded me of how quickly those days had passed. When I returned to my small dorm room, the silence was deafening. I was putting things in their places, and with every movement my heart was filled with some strange anxiety. My phone vibrated. I looked at the screen and saw a stream of notifications. Missed calls, messages. From my parents. From Vanessa. I sat down on the bed and slowly began to look through them. The first message was from my mom. "Miranda, you need to talk to Grandma. Immediately. This is unacceptable." Then, from the father. "We are your parents. You owe us your loyalty. Make her unblock our accounts." I was sitting holding the phone in my hands, and suddenly I felt strangely calm. It was as if something inside me that had been squeezed and clamped for many years had finally straightened out. Vanessa's messages were even worse than I expected. "You little rascal. Is that what you wanted? Ruin everything? We're stuck in Hawaii because of you. Fix it. Now." I felt my hands tremble as I read these words. The audacity with which they demanded my help after all they had done was staggering. I took a deep breath to control myself, and without giving myself time to think, I typed in the answer. "This is between you and Grandma. I won't interfere. Please don't write to me about this again." I clicked send and then blocked their numbers. And for a moment I felt relieved. But it didn't last long. They started calling from different numbers, leaving voicemails full of demands and insults. Their anger seemed to flare up with every attempt, with every failure, to reach me. During one of the calls that I mistakenly answered, my mother's words tore a hole in my fragile defenses. "You ungrateful little bitch. Stop it," she growled. "I should never have given birth to you. I wish I had an abortion." Those words hit harder than any betrayal. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, and my ears rang. Then slowly, without saying a word, I ended the call. And I blocked all the numbers they tried to contact me from. I curled up on the bed, feeling the tears silently trickle down my cheeks. My mother's words echoed in my head. Bitter, cutting like a knife. The following weeks were like a struggle for survival. I rushed into my studies, hiding from the pain behind textbooks and assignments. I forced myself to get up every morning, go to lectures, and pretend that everything was fine. Sometimes, when the silence in the room became unbearable, I called my grandmother. "How are you holding up, darling?" "What is it?" she asked. Her voice was warm and caring. "I'm fine, Grandma," I replied, trying to sound strong. "I'm just focused on my studies." "That's my girl," she replied proudly. "Remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let them get to you." Those words were like a lifeline. It was like someone was keeping me afloat when I was barely coping with the waves. When I felt like I couldn't take it anymore, I remembered her confident voice. While my parents and Vanessa showed their true selves, my grandmother became my rock, my safe haven in this storm. I knew I could trust her when the rest of the world was falling apart. It's been about 2 months since the ill-fated birthday. It was a fresh autumn day, and the air smelled of fallen leaves and something new that always comes with change. I was walking around campus, lost in thoughts about the upcoming finance exam. And suddenly I heard someone calling me. Miranda. I turned around and froze. Jake was walking towards me with a wide, confident smile. Vanessa's boyfriend. The same Jake who was with her in Hawaii. He looked the same as always, confident, attractive. I couldn't help but notice how the other girls were stealing glances at him, full of interest. Before I could say a word, he came up to me and hugged me. I froze, too startled to push him away. When he pulled back, still smiling, all I could say was, "Jake, what are you doing here?" He tilted his head slightly, his gaze piercing. "I was hoping to meet you. We need to talk. There's a cafe nearby, shall we go?" Everything inside is compressed. Every instinct told me to say no, turn away, and walk away. But curiosity, sharp and unrelenting, made me nod. Okay. But not for long. We settled down in a quiet corner of the cafe, away from prying ears. Jake leaned closer, and his expression became unexpectedly serious. "Miranda, I need to tell you something." I braced myself for the worst. Family news? Another wave of attacks? I was ready for everything except what he said next. "I want to be with you." The words sounded harsh, like a stone thrown into water. He reached across the table to take my hand, and I jerked back. "What?" I gasped, unable to believe my ears. "I'm going to leave Vanessa. For your sake." The world around him froze. The people at the neighboring tables had disappeared. Only his words remained, heavy as lead. "Jake, what are you talking about?" You're with my sister." He shook his head, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've been in love with you for a long time, Miranda. I was dating Vanessa just to be with you. I know how it sounds, I know it's crazy, but it's true." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My head is all messed up. Anger, disgust, surprise, all mixed into one lump. "You." I began, but I couldn't find the words. "Did you use my sister? All this time?" He sighed, his gaze almost pleading. She was never close to me. But you're different. You're real. I can't hide it anymore." I looked at him, trying to figure out if this was a joke, some kind of strange prank, another humiliation. But there was no hint of a lie in his eyes. Only conviction. Only desire. As he spoke, my thoughts raced as if trapped. It didn't make sense. Jake had never shown any interest in me before. In fact, he always seemed like a man who barely noticed my existence when he was around Vanessa. Something was wrong here. It's too suspicious. Too suddenly. I decided to play along. To understand where all this leads. Putting on a shy, slightly embarrassed smile, I said, "Wow, Jake, that's really sweet. I had no idea you thought that of me." His face lit up instantly. Hope flashed in his eyes, too hasty, too greedy. Actually, his voice became softer, almost conspiratorial. "So what do you think? Will you give us a chance?" I pretended to think about his words, as if I were weighing them, letting the pause stretch out, watching him. "It's too much to process," I finally said. "Maybe we could meet again, in a week?" "Of course," he agreed hastily, his face beaming with relief. "Take as much time as you need. I'll be waiting for you, Miranda." After he left, I stayed at the cafe. I sat for a long time sipping my cold coffee, replaying this strange encounter in my head. Every word, every look. It was impossible not to connect his sudden declaration of love with my grandmother's decision to deprive my family of financial support. But why? What was he hoping to get? And most importantly, what was his real goal? I left the cafe, my head buzzing with thoughts, from guesses that burned worse than any truth. And as soon as I stepped onto the sidewalk, my phone vibrated in my hand. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. I froze, torn between wanting to reset the call and needing to find out why she was calling. I clicked reply. "You traitorous little bitch." Her voice exploded over the speaker, shrill and filled with rage. "How could you do this to me?" I yanked the phone away, wincing at her scream. "Vanessa? What the hell are you saying? Don't play dumb." "Stop it," she screamed. "You ruined my life. You house-destroying censorship. My patience has run out. Shut up and explain what you're talking about, or I'm hanging up." There was a moment of silence, heavy as a storm before impact. Then her voice cut through the space again, trembling with anger. "Jake just dumped me," she spat out. "He said he's going to date you. How could you?" It was like being punched in the gut. "What?" I gasped, unable to believe it. "Vanessa, I swear I had no idea. Don't lie to me." Her scream pierced the speaker again. "Do you think I'm going to believe in your innocence? I bet you're happy. You're dying of happiness, aren't you? Well, guess what? He's only looking for you because of Grandma's money." My mind was spinning. Grandmother's money? What are you talking about? Vanessa laughed, bitterly, with hatred. "Oh, you don't know? Well, let me enlighten you, sis. Grandma cut us, Mom, Dad, and me, out of her will. She leaves everything to you." I leaned against the nearest wall, feeling a wave of dizziness wash over me. "But why? Why she?" "Because she found out," Vanessa interrupted, her voice shaking with rage. "She found out about Mom and Dad's plan. They tried to declare her incapacitated in order to gain access to her assets. And that old bat somehow got wind of it." I felt sick. Vanessa's words became unbearable. "Are you saying that they really did it?" "Yes," Vanessa screamed. "They slandered me, and now we're all cut off. And you stayed. The perfect child." The words fell on me like stones. Slowly but surely, the picture became clear. Jake. His sudden confession. His persistence. Everything fit. Everything. "So that's why Jake," I whispered. "He came to me because of the money." "Bingo," Vanessa chuckled. "Give the girl a prize. That disgusting old woman. I hope that she—" "Don't you dare finish that sentence," I interrupted. The voice was as cold as a blade. Silence. "I do not know who is worse in this situation," I continued. "You and your parents, who tried to steal from Grandma, or Jake, who hunts for her money like a snake." Vanessa gasped. "No," I replied softly. "How dare you all? I don't want to hear another word from you, Vanessa. Don't call me anymore." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking when I put the phone down. Tears burned my eyes, and I let them flow. Anger. Pain. Betrayal. Everything was mixed up, tearing me up from the inside. How could they? How could my family be so cruel? So greedy? With shaking hands, I dialed my grandmother's number. I didn't think I would be able to speak, but her voice, warm and soothing, instantly relieved the tension. "Miranda, darling, is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears. "Grandma, I just found out about everything. Heritage. About how Mom and Dad tried to declare you incompetent. It's true." There was a short pause on the other end of the line. Then Grandma chuckled softly. "Oh, my dear," she said. "I've been waiting for you to hear about this drama." "Yes, it's true." She continued to talk, and in her voice there was a mixture of light amusement and a shadow of disappointment. "You should have seen their faces when the commission appeared at my door. I invited them to tea. We sat, drank, and chatted. I answered all their questions, and to dispel their last doubts, I even solved a couple of Sudoku puzzles. You know, to prove that my mind is still sharp." I couldn't help but smile slightly as I imagined this scene. Grandma, with her dignity and ironic smile, demonstrating her insight. "And what happened next?" I asked. "They left quite happy," she replied. "The commission found that everything was fine with me, and their ridiculous demand was rejected. Of course, after that, I had no choice but to protect my assets. And to protect you, Miranda, from their greed. I left them the house. Let them keep it. But the rest—" Her voice became softer, but firmer. "The rest will go to you, my dear." I froze, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. "Grandma." I do not know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," she replied, and I could almost hear her smiling. "Just promise me one thing. Use it wisely. Build your life. I want you to take over the company one day. So that you can build something more. So that you can create something to be proud of. I promise, Grandma." The words were hard, but they were sincere. "I won't let you down." After that conversation, something changed in me. I plunged into my studies with renewed energy, as if every number and formula brought me closer to something important, to a future that was only mine. My family, if I could even call them that, became strangers to me. I blocked their numbers, ignored their emails and attempts to contact them. They showed their true colors, and I didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. A week has passed. I almost forgot about the conversation with Jake, but true to his word, he showed up again. His confident smile faltered slightly when he saw the cold look in my eyes. "Miranda," he began, coming closer and reaching for my hand. I jerked away. "Save her, Jake," I spat. "I know all about your little scheme. You and Vanessa. You deserve each other. You're both mean and self-serving." His smug facade collapsed. "You're making a big mistake," he grinned, but there was no longer the same confidence in his eyes. "Think about it. You don't want to give up on a guy like me." I couldn't help but laugh. "A guy like you? A gold digger who doesn't know what morality is? No, thanks. I think I'll pass." I turned around, leaving him standing there, startled and confused. When I walked away, relief flooded my chest. It's like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. The weight I've been carrying for years. Manipulation, lies, and a constant sense of inadequacy are all left behind. In the following months, my grandmother became my mentor, teaching me the intricacies of business management under her wing. We spent the weekend sorting through financial reports, analyzing the market, and discussing strategies. I learned to make decisions, calculate risks, and think a few steps ahead. "You have a great business head, Miranda," she said, beaming with pride. "You will do great things." And I believed her. For the first time in my life, I felt that I had a purpose, that I was needed, that my work and my aspirations mattered. I wasn't superfluous, I wasn't a mistake. I was Miranda, a woman who built her life on her own terms. Of course, the pain remained. The loss of my parents, the betrayal of my sister, it doesn't go away. Sometimes I woke up at night, catching myself thinking about how it could have been. Sometimes I found myself wanting to just hear that I was important, that I was loved. But now that pain was part of the past. Joy overshadowed her now. The joy of finally finding my place in the world. The joy of being worth something on my own. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.